Good morning. It's an absolute pleasure for me to come to the second Benchmark conference to come and speak to you again. For those of you who were here last year, this is quite unusual for me because I often sort of come back and have completely different decks, but I thought what I would do is talk to you about the future. And I talked a little bit about the future for those of you who were here last time in my last conference address. And I thought what I would do is go back over some of the things that I said and sort of tell you where we're at and how we're developing at Bing and what we're doing in terms of an engine to try and drive towards challenging Google and particularly how we see search evolving for the future. And so last time I kicked off with this slide and I said that there was, we're on the brink of a revolution and that within search we're moving very rapidly towards a very different view of what we think about as search. And particularly what we're doing is we're moving away from this idea that search is a box and that you will go to a destination for search and that whatever you do, you're going to have to type and that you're going to have to then go and find a link and click on something in order to find the information that you need. What I talked about last time was a view of the world where we were going to be increasingly reliant on personal assistants to be able to get the information that we need in a world where search was going to become increasingly pervasive across devices. It was going to become more predictive and that it was going to become increasingly proactive, where search was going to start to make inferences on your behalf to take decisions for you, provided that you let them, that those personal assistants would actually be crucial to your future happiness. I also talked about how we're going to have an increasing reliance on things like voice, that we can't just continue to think about search as text, as typing, and how we are moving in a world towards a completely different way of thinking about search, not just within the realms of what we can type, but also what we can say and what we can see. So today is a sort of a check back, really. Is for me to talk to you about going back to the future, so talking about what are the things that we are looking at and how is Bing trying to change the world of search and how are we actually doing on that journey. So I think if we start off, the thing which is always worth doing is just going back and talking about how search has evolved and where we are today versus where we were a few years ago. So if you start off and you think about, obviously we're in Britain. Not only are we in Britain, we're in Manchester, where 9 times out of 10 it's going to be raining. And I know how much we love to talk about the weather. So if you think about weather searches as the first sort of port of call, I want to show you how they've evolved over time. If you go back to the sort of the beginning of search in the 90s, this is your classic box and 10 blue links. So you type weather, you'd find a whole bunch of results, you'd click on one of those results, and then you'd find out what the weather was doing. Fast forward to the noughties, this is the world of instant answers. So now you're still typing in something like London weather or Manchester weather. In this case, though, you don't need to click on something necessarily, but you're getting instant answers in the SERP so that you're reducing the friction and reducing the number of steps you need in order to get to where you need that information. If you think about how we've evolved and how we've changed search today, now we're in a very different arena. Now we're in a world where we can ask our digital assistant, so in this case, your Microsoft's digital assistant, Cortana, you can ask Cortana, do I need an umbrella today? Now that's a very different way of thinking from the keyword-driven, keyword-centric view of the world. Because when I ask, do I need an umbrella today, if you just think within a keyword-centric view, then the answer to that, or what the search engine would probably pick up from that, would try and deliver you maybe to an Amazon results page to go and buy an umbrella. But clearly, as humans, we understand that when you make that search, do I need an umbrella, we're not asking for an accessory to wear. What we're asking actually is it going to rain? And today we have the ability to be able to understand the contextual nuance of that question, the semantics of what you're asking, and to give you a relevant answer and give you the information that you need for the query that you've asked. Now all of this comes together, as I say, in what we're calling a new sort of layer of search intelligence, and it's been driven by these assistants. So we have Cortana at Microsoft, Clearly, Google has got Google Now. There's Siri. There's lots of assistants which are coming onto the market, and there will be more. And I think we're going to see a proliferation of these things, which, and particularly as we start to get interactions with more things like where people start to develop bots, these are going to be the engines of change and are going to be the drivers of these interactions. So one of the things that I said last time was that voice search was going to become a much bigger deal. And so I think it's interesting when we look at some of the stats from people like Comscore are saying that by 2020, 50% of all search is going to be either voice or image driven. And on top of that, when we look at some of the latest figures for how people are already engaging with voice search, particularly within the younger generation, say 70% of millennials are already using voice search of some kind. And of that 70%, 25% of that 70 are using it every day. So we're already at a stage where actually people are engaging with voice search much more readily than they have been before. And I think if we think about some of the criticisms or some of the nervousness around what voice search could potentially be an issue for, people wondering whether people are going to be comfortable talking to their phones on the street, I think all of these things are already sort of starting to erode and disappear. Now, one of the things that I wanted to highlight is what that means for you as advertisers today. So one of the things that we've seen at Bing when we're looking at voice search is that typically, because of its conversational nature, the queries tend to be much longer. So if you look at the blue line on this graph, you'll see that typically text search sort of tops out at about 2 or 3 keywords per search phrase, whereas you can see from the voice queries that they're much, much longer. So you're going to have to think very differently about how you approach this in terms of what are the things that you can do to make sure that you're capturing the natural language intent of the voice search. I've put together 3 things which I think you could do today as very simple, very easy things, either within, these are specifically for PPC, but actually 2 of these things certainly apply also to your SEO strategies. So the first of those is to use broad match. If you think about it, the way that we're moving with voice search is that you can't possibly anticipate all of the ways that people are going to think to search for the things that you want, particularly when we're starting to make semantic inferences from things that have no direct relevance to what you're thinking of. So with that example of the weather, searching for an umbrella, unless you sort of put yourself in that mindset, you can't possibly think about the way that how someone searching for an umbrella actually is going to be related to the weather. So broad match, I think, is going to be one of the things that, as PPC marketers in particular, we're going to become increasingly reliant on to be able to capture all of the different ways that people are searching for a given attribute. And one of the things that we've seen is that people are, at the moment, are still quite nervous about using broad match because inherently you're giving up control, you're matching against things which you perhaps don't necessarily see as relevant, and you're having to actually spend a lot of time managing that broad match and making sure that your negatives are in place and all the rest of it. But this is the way that we're moving, and this is what you're going to have to start thinking about. I like to think about search, particularly with voice, moving back towards, I call it, this is the way that my mum searches today. When my mum searches for a holiday, she doesn't know how to use a search engine efficiently, so she won't search for a cheap Turkey holiday. She'll search for, and she'll literally type into the engine at the moment, give me a nice family holiday for 4, somewhere warm at about the July time that's going to be nice and sort of not too expensive. Now, she's then surprised, and what she gets currently is a crock of shit. But where we're moving to is a place where the engines are going to be able to decipher that intent and the query and give her the information that she needs. So broad match is going to be the only way that you're going to be able to possibly capture all of those different queries. The second thing that you can think about is adding question words. Questions are the way that we are starting to interact with search engines, and we're asking more and more questions. At Bing, we're seeing a massive increase in question queries for who, what, why, when, how. And so think about what that means for not just for your PPC marketing, but also for your SEO content. There's a brilliant website, which I'm sure a couple of people, if you haven't heard of it, I'm no doubt it will be referenced today, called answerthepublic.com. It's an amazing way for you to understand how people are searching the web to find information or to find questions relating to a particular topic. And you can literally put anything in there and it will give you really interesting sort of questions around your particular topic. So I'd get you to think about, again, if we go back to a holiday, rather than thinking about bidding for cheap Turkey holidays, thinking about bidding for, how much does it cost for a Turkey holiday? And the last thing I think you should be thinking about is your prepositions. So previously in Bing, but also in Google, what we did was a thing called normalization, where we used to count prepositions as all being the same thing, and therefore when you put an exact match on a particular phrase, it didn't matter what the prepositions were, if it was of, at, from, to, how. All of these sort of little words would be counted within exact. When we removed normalization, what that meant was that all of these words were unique keywords. So think about the difference between the cost for a holiday to Turkey and the cost of a holiday to Turkey. Those are now two completely unique search terms which you need to be thinking about. And again, that's going to be something you need to think about for your bidding strategy for PPC, but also about how you write the content and the language that you use on your landing pages for SEO. So all of that is quite sort of tactical, and what I wanted to talk to you about is how we're trying to think ahead for the future and changing the world of search. And so there's one thing that's really important, and at the core of everything, I think, is the idea that what we have to do has to be really centered on helping people, on human-centric design. Microsoft has a new mission, which we evolved over the last year or so. And if you remember historically, the Microsoft mission was a computer on every desk, in every home and in every office. Whereas the new mission is much more about people. It's not about technology anymore. It's about actually the humans. And so this is about empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. We want people to be better in what they do, not just giving them more technology. And so I want to tell you a very personal story about empowering people to achieve more through, this is a case study of me. So this picture here was taken during my wedding. This is me, that's my wife. People often ask me when I do presentations if I get nervous when I stand up in front of a group of people, and actually the reality is that I don't really get that nervous. With the one exception of my wedding speech. It was the hardest presentation I ever had to give. And the reason why it was so difficult was, as you can see, my wife is Asian. She's actually from Taiwan. So she speaks Mandarin, and her family don't speak English. So I had to deliver half of my wedding speech in Chinese, and I don't actually speak Chinese. Are there any Mandarin speakers in the room? Excellent. Now, the thing is with Mandarin is that it is a really incredibly difficult language to get your head around. And the reason for that is that if you don't pronounce the tone of the word correctly, you completely change the meaning of the word. So this is the first sentence that I wanted to say in Chinese. So I wrote it down in English, I got it translated, and this was the sentence that I wanted to deliver in Chinese to my future in-laws. Now the thing is when you put that into Chinese, unless you understand the symbols, that's just a bunch of gobbledygook, and that doesn't make any sense. And even when you put that into the English version of Chinese, it's still ridiculously difficult. And the reason for that, as I say, is that each of these little, have we got a pointer on here? Yeah. Each of these little intonations here tell you how you have to say the word. And if you say it wrong, then you completely change the whole meaning of what you're trying to say. Let me give you an example. So this bit at the end here, Jing Yi, these last two words are critical to the meaning of the sentence that I want to say. Now, if I say it correctly, Jing, instead of incorrectly, Jing. Now, for some of you, you've just heard me say the same word twice. I guarantee those are two very distinct words. That is the difference, by the way, of me saying that I want to show my respect to my family and me wanting to show something else entirely. Now, you can imagine my nervousness as I'm about to deliver this speech. Because if I get this wrong, this could be the quickest move from marriage to divorce in history. And so I had to practice this speech for 3 months to get this right. But we all know that actually, in reality, in the world that we all inhabit and live in, we rarely have that time and that luxury to be able to spend to really get to know and to understand what we're going to do. And so, and the thing is that even if you do practice one language, today we might be speaking with somebody in Chinese, tomorrow you might be speaking with somebody in Russian. What we've done at Microsoft has taken years and years to do, but what we've done is created a platform where you can start to have a real-time conversation with somebody in a completely different language. So I want to show you what that looks like. It's called Skype Translate.
Mandarin is difficult, very difficult. Even the locals say so. I've learned some basic Mandarin, or what I call survival Chinese, but when I'm out traveling in the provinces, they don't always get me.
Can you understand me now, Shangbin?
你现在能理解我吗？
Tom， 你会讲中文啦
He, you speak Chinese.
Thanks, Shangbin. Your English has improved too. It's really nice to see you again, and also nice to talk to you. So, do you know where I can get a good picture from up in the hills?
那些山有很多秘密。
Yes, there are many secrets.
What time should we start out for the top?
星期四早上5点出发。
Thursday, we start at 5 in the morning.
That's gonna hurt.
Communication is, of course, the key to my career. In order to be able to explore a new culture, you need to be able to communicate with its people. That's when the barriers come down and you discover the real China, and its true beauty and its secrets open up.
漂亮吗？
Good.
So if you saw me speak here last year, you might remember that I showed you a sort of an early version of that, the beta of that, which was we did as a translation exercise between English and German. This is no longer a beta. This is something that you can download today and start using today. If you have the latest version of Skype, you can start having a conversation today with somebody in English, French, Spanish, German, Chinese, Russian, Italian, there's a couple more, we keep adding more all of the time. This is a very human-centered product, but this is still search. It's not search as we know it today, it's not search as we think about it as a box and 10 blue links, but this is search and it's Bing which is powering that translation, which is enabling these conversations to happen. And so I want to talk to you about the last thing I wanted to take you through is how we see search moving to the next level, and I think that this is going to be something that we will, when we look back, this will be a complete sort of step change for the industry that we live in. And the idea is how we can teach a machine to see and to recognize objects. Again, if you were here last year, you might remember that I showed a video of how we taught a machine to recognize breeds of dog. So there's a team of people in Microsoft who work in the States whose job it is to try and categorize every object in the world, including not just inanimate objects, but real things as well. They developed this amazing AI protocol which allowed you to take a photo of a dog and it would tell you what breed it was, whether it was a Labrador or a Basset Hound or a Shih Tzu. Which is pretty amazing, right? But how do you teach a machine to be able to recognize every object in the world? If you take a pretty simple object like a chair, how do you help a machine to understand the value of what is chairness? What does that mean? You can't just say, well, a chair is a thing which has got 4 legs and a back, because actually that doesn't even begin to comprehend all of the different varieties of chair, probably even in this room. Some have 4, some have 3, some have 2, some are backless chairs, and yet we all intuitively as humans understand exactly what we mean when we say chair, and we don't confuse it with other sitting implements like a sofa. Now what we've done is we've created an AI which you can go and use today. It's called Caption Bot. And what this does is it basically goes through and it tries to categorize and understand and recognize the objects which it's looking at within a particular photo. This is another picture from my wedding. And so this is actually a little bit before the speeches. So I don't know if you can read that, but that says, what I've done is I've shown the machine the photo, and it's tried to recognize the different objects which are in that. So it says, I'm not really confident, but I think it's a man holding a knife to cut a wedding cake, and he seems not very happy. So you all know the reason now why I'm not happy. It's because I'm about to deliver the biggest speech of my life. But look at what we've done there and what we've managed to achieve with the AI. It's absolutely phenomenal. First of all, have a look at this wedding cake. This is not your standard three-tier cake. This is a badass Game of Thrones, unique, totally unique wedding cake. I would say that there has never been a cake quite like it. And yet, the machine can still recognize that it is a cake indeed that we're cutting into. And okay, I'm using a sword, not a knife. But the fact that it's been able to pick out that there's a couple there, and the fact that we're on our wedding day because it can recognize that someone's standing in a dress and a veil, and that I'm about to cut into this cake, that is a lot of very complex things that it's trying to decipher, and that it's picked out from my facial features and recognized that I'm not particularly happy because I'm too busy thinking about this speech that I have to deliver. That is a lot of very, very complex algorithms that is trying to process all of that information. Now, I mentioned that our mission is to empower every person on the planet to achieve more. And one of the things that, if we are going to live up to that mission, is that we have to truly empower every person, including very niche groups like the blind. One of the things that I'm most proud of all of the work that we are doing at Microsoft right now is this piece of technology which I'm about to show you, because what it does is do something very different. We are not doing technology for technology's sake. We are not empowering just early adopters of technology to do something cool. We are making a very real difference to people's lives, because what we're now able to do using this technology and using Bing is to empower the blind to see.
I'm Saqib Sheikh. I lost my sight when I was 7, and shortly after that I went to a school for the blind, and that's where I was introduced to talking computers, and that really opened up a whole new world of opportunities. I joined Microsoft 10 years ago as a software engineer. I love making things which improve people's lives. And one of the things I've always dreamt of since I was at university was this idea of something that could tell you at any moment what's going on around you.
I think it's a man jumping in the air doing a trick on a skateboard.
I teamed up with like-minded engineers to make an app which lets you know who and what is around you. It's based on top of the Microsoft Intelligence APIs, which makes it so much easier to make this kind of thing. The app runs on smartphones, but also on the Pivot Head smart glasses. When you're talking to a bigger group, sometimes you can talk and there's no response, and you think, is everyone listening really well, or are they half asleep? And you never know.
I see two faces, 40-year-old man with a beard looking surprised, 20-year-old woman looking happy.
The app can describe the general age and gender of the people around me and what their emotions are, which is incredible. One of the things that's most useful about the app is the ability to read out text.
Hello, good afternoon. Here's your menu.
Great, thank you. I can use the app on my phone to take a picture of the menu, and it's going to guide me on how to take that correct photo.
Move camera to the bottom right and away from the document.
And then it'll recognize the text. Read me the headings.
I see appetizers, salads, paninis, pizzas, pastas.
Hi. Years ago, this was science fiction. I never thought it would be something that you could actually do. But artificial intelligence is improving at an ever faster rate. And I'm really excited to see where we can take this. As engineers, we're always standing on the shoulders of giants, building on top of what went before. And in this case, we've taken years of research from Microsoft Research to pull this off.
I think it's a young girl throwing an orange frisbee in the park.
For me, it's about taking that far-off dream and building it one step at a time. I think this is just the beginning.
Now, I hope you will agree that when you see something like that, this is beyond just technology. To me, this is, that's the closest that we're going to get to magic, because what we're doing there is something very different from what we've ever done before, using technology in a completely different way. And I hope what that does is it proves to you just how committed we are to the future of search. How Microsoft is taking and investing something which is way, way more than just thinking about how we're going to get more revenue out of people searching in Bing, but actually using it to do something very useful and something which is going to change the world for a lot of people. So for me, to sum up, the revolution is not coming, it's happening. We really are changing the world of search. But it's not search as we think of it today. And at the core, it has to be something which is absolutely centered on the human, that it has to be able to make people achieve more, to give people something that they've never been able to do before. This is our vision for the future, and this is how we feel that we really can change the world, not just for search, but for the benefit of humankind. Thank you very much for your time.